Good day, everyone, especially to you, Ma'am Sani. So for today, I am going to discuss the isoquant and the isocost or the long-run analysis. But before that, let me introduce myself. I am Sherlyn Lopez from Maniki Kapalong, Davao del Norte. So first, let us define what is isoquant. So isoquant is a locus of points showing all the technically efficient way of combining factors of production to produce a fixed level of output. In case of two variables factors, labor and capital, an isoquant appears as a curve on a graph, the axis of which measure quantities of the two factors. The curve shows the efficient alternative techniques of production or alternative combination of two factors that can be produce a fixed level of output. So an isoquant is also known as equal production of curve. So an isoquant includes all the technically efficient method or all the combination of factors of productions for producing a given level of output. So the production isoquant may assume various shape depending on the degree of factors. So an isoquant shows the different combinations of capital and labor that give the same output. So in this diagram, the isoquant shows all the combination of labor and capital that can produce a total output, or the TPP, which is the total physical product of 4,000. So an isoquant is a graph showing combination of capital and labor that will yield the same output. So the slope of the isoquant indicates the MRS, or at any point along the isoquant how much capital would be required units of labor that production point. So in this graph, isoquant, this could be 20 units of capital and 18 units of labor, or more capital intensive, and then 9 units of capital and 35 units of labor, more labor intensive. An isoquant is usually a shape concave because of the law of diminishing return, with the fixed capital employing extra workers gives a declining increase in the marginal product or MP. But even though they have a different combination of labor and capital, but they produce the same output. So the marginal rate of substitution, or the MRS, is economical theory that illustrates the rate of which one factor must decrease so that the same level of productivity can be maintained when another factor is increased. So the formula of MRS equals the K, or the capital, over the labor. So the marginal rate of substitution is the amount of one factor. So example, the K, or the capital, that can be released by one factor's, example, L, or labor. If two units of capital could be replaced with one factor labor, the MRS, or the marginal rate substitution, would be 2. Um, Next is the diminishing marginal rate of substitution, or MRS. It is the rate at which units are exchanged to each other to maintain the same level of satisfaction. So, diminishing marginal rate of substitution, increasing the amount of labor, reducing the amount of capital needed, but uh, decreasing rate. So, in the given example, if a firm employed 2 units of labor and 40 units of capital, then the employing one extra worker can enable to save 10 units of capital. So this is quite an efficient savings. The firm only has to pay one extra worker but can save the cost of 40. However, at a combination of 9 labor, employing an extra worker enable a savings of only 2 units of capital. Therefore, the more the workers are employed, there is a diminishing rate at which you can substitute the other factor. There comes a point where employing more than workers barely save any capital at all. This is when diminishing returns of labor is very high, workers effectively get in each other way. An As one moves down the isoquant, output remains the same. Therefore, the output gain from employing more labor must equal the output lost from employing more capital. So this equation gives us MPP times L, or MPP, or marginal physical production, over marginal physical production times capital equals K over L, or amount of capital that can be reduced when labor is increased, or typically by 1 unit, equals MRS, or marginal rate substitution. So this shows an isoquant map. So an isoquant map is a very similar to indifference map. It can be formed while producing a higher quantity of production from the various possible combination of two factors. It is facilitate multiple levels of output. So an isoquant map shows a different level of outputs. For example, I1, or isoquant 1, may show the combination of capital and labor that can produce 4,000 TPP, or stands for total physical product. So I2 naman, or the isoquant 2, may show the combination of capital and labor that can produce 5,000 TPP. So the I5 naman, or the isoquant 5, is a higher output than I4. In the short term, a firm faces a trade-off along one particular isoquant. But in the long term, a firm can invest in increasing capital stock and produce a higher output for the same quantity of labor. So let's move to the isocost. So first, let us define what is isocost. So an isocost is a line shows all the combination of inputs which cost the same total amount. So although similar to the budget constraint, in consumer's theory, the use of the isocost line pertains to cost minimization in production as opposed to utility of maximization. So an isocost line is a locus of points showing the alternative combination of factors that can be purchased with a fixed amount of money. And every point of a given isocost line represents the same total cost. So this graph shows the isocost. Isocost shows all the combination of factors that cost the same to employ. So this line are straight line because factor price are constant and they have a negative slope equal to the factor price ratio. Example, the ratio of labor price to capital price. So in this example given, so a unit of labor and capital. So if we employ 30 units of capital and 30 units of labor, the total cost will be 200,000 for capital and 200,000 for labor to come up with a 400,000 na total cost. So, if we are employed 10 units of capital and 50 units of labor, the total cost will be 66,666 for the capital and 333,333 for the labor to come up with a total cost of 400,000. So an isocost line is a graph of a combination of labor and capital or any other two factors of productions, such as that the total cost remains the same. So an isocost line is a producer what a budget line is to a consumer. Change in labor cost. So an ISO cost with a change in labor cost. So labor cost definition is the total cost of all labor used in a business. So it is one of the most substantial operation costs. These are particularly important in any business which experience heavy human resource labor costs. So in this example given, so the initial cost of labor and capital is both 5,000. So, for example, you have 60 units of labor, so times 5,000 equals 300,000. However, if labor cost rises to 10,000, then the ISO cost shift to the left. Now we keep the cost at 300,000, right? So a firm could only employ 30 workers instead of 60. So 30 times 10,000, so that we come up with 300,000 na total cost. In this ISO cost graph shows that even though they change the cost of labor, they still have the same total cost, which is 300,000. So, profit maximization. So, profit maximization can be defined as a process in the long run or short run to identify the most efficient manner of the increased profit. So, it is a mainly concern with determination of a price and output level that returns the maximum profit. So, as an example given, so we have one ISO cost and three isoquants. So, with the ISO cost of 400,000 na total cost. So, the maximum output of the firm can manage would be a TPP, or the total physical product of 4,000. It is produced at, say, 13 units of capital and 48 units of labor. It would only be able to produce TPP, or the total physical product, of 3,500. A total TPP of 4,500 is currently not possible without increasing cost beyond 400,000 na total cost. So, profit maximization, the least cost method of production. So, another way of seeking to maximize profit is to target the output of, which is 4,000, and then find the ISO cost with the lowest possible cost. So, in this example, in this case, the ISO cost which touch the points of the TPP, or the total physical points of the total cost of 400,000. So, that's it for my report. So the optimal combination of inputs will be discussed by Ma'am Ray Fernandez. So thank you and God bless everyone.